Got a quick little wet fly for you today. This is the Queen of the Waters. This was a requested fly. It is kind of the sister fly of the King of the Waters, which I did a video on a number of weeks ago. It's a fun little fly to tie. There's only 3 ingredients to this fly. There's a floss body, a palmered hackle, and a wing. And I'll show you a little bit different technique on the wing than I've done in some of the other videos. But it's very straightforward and a very, very productive fly. It was very, very popular years ago. It's an old fly that is also in Ray Bergman's book, Trout. Just a fun fly to tie. So that's the Queen of the Waters, and I'll get started. Start the Queen of the Waters by placing my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad 33.99 in a size 6. Debarb the hook, and I'll attach my thread. Start out with, I'm going to use a Danville 6/0 in white. It's an orange floss body, and if I use a black thread, I'll end up darkening up the floss. So I'll start in a white. I'm going to attach my thread about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. I'll run a base layer of thread all the way down the hook shank. This just helps keep that floss body nice and smooth. Get down just past the point of the hook, and I'll tie in the hackle. There's only 3 components to this fly. It's a palmered hackle, an orange floss body, and then the wing on it. But because the hackle is palmered on after the orange floss body is applied, I have to tie that in first. I'm using, this is just a brown whiting hen saddle. It's kind of variegated a little bit. It's got some dark spots in it, and it's a little bit of nice coloring to it, so it adds a little bit more than just a solid brown. What I want to do is choose a feather where the last few barbs, this is going to be my last wrap or so to that hackle, I want those to be at least the width of the gap, or maybe a little bit more. That's what's going to be right up here. Going to hold that by the tip, stroke those fibers back to present a tie-in spot. Don't have to clip this off if I don't want to, because this will all fit in the length of the body. Now I'm going to wrap this in with one wrap, and I don't have tight tension on this, just a little bit, and I'm going to pull this back. And the reason is that I want just a little bit of this in the back where there's no barbs sticking out. And that has to do with when I put in the first few wraps of this and I bring it around for the collar, I don't want those barbs that normally would be right here up against that thread sticking out the back end. Now for the body, I'm using an orange Danville 4-strand Rayon floss. Pull that back so that it is the length of the body, and then I'll start wrapping forward. Try to get nice touching turns here, as this will give you a nice underbody. A little bit more wax on my thread. Because I do not have a throat up in the front here and the wing is not real thick, I can bring the thread a little bit closer to the eye of the hook because this fly ends up with having a little bit smaller head on it. Now I'm going to apply the floss body, and then I'm going to wrap the hackle in an open spiral. 5 nice open wraps to apply the hackle. Bring my 5th wrap right up here by the head space. I'm going to bring it around one more time, and this just puts a little bit of a collar, not much, right up at the front end. It just kind of finishes it off a little bit. Sweep those fibers back, barbs I should say, just so that they're not sticking out over the front. And as you can see, that very first wrap here in the back, I don't have a lot of barbs sticking out almost like a tail. They all start to kind of stick out, not quite perpendicular to the body, but they stick out more on the rib than they do in the back. So I'll change over to my black thread. This is a Danville 6/0 in black to finish the fly off. Get some I'll get some wax on that. As I said before, there's no throat on this, so I can tie this wing in a little bit closer and have a little bit smaller head on this fly. Now the wing on this calls for teal or gray mallard. Teal and gray mallard feathers are very similar in their structure. Teal usually has more pronounced barring or grizzly on it. The black is much darker than just a gray. I've done a number of wet flies using the mallard, gray mallard for a wing, and I'll refer you to some of those flies if you're interested to see how I did those wings. This one's, I'm going to use a little bit different technique. I've got a larger feather here that I've gone ahead and stripped away the fluff. Done a couple of different, couple of flies out of this already. What I'm going to do is take the one more pronounced side here, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 3/8 of an inch, something like that. I'm going to straighten these barbs out, not quite perpendicular. I want to get the tips nice and even. Then I'll peel all of those off, and I'm just going to fold that in half. So once I have that done, I'll take this and just fold it in half. You just fold that in half, and it just makes a nice wing. Could be a little bit wider if you want, but it just gives you a nice colored wing on it, and you don't have the nice swept up end to it, but it works just as well. I'm going to tie that in so that the tip goes just past the barb a little bit, or excuse me, just past the bend a little bit. Secure that in place. Trim away the excess. And then I'll bring my thread down to behind the eye of the hook, working backwards to cover up all those butt ends, cover up any other exposed material to make the head of the fly. Flatten my thread out. Put in my whip finish. Cut away the thread. A little bit of head cement on both sides of the head. That will soak down in there. So that will secure the head. In a moment, I will put some black lacquer on that to finish up the Queen of the Waters. As I said, very basic, simple fly. It's a nice fly to work on some basic skills in terms of working with the floss and working with the hen hackle and doing these wings out of teal or mallard flank, either one. You could, if you wanted to, you could even use like a bronze mallard and put in a really, really pretty wing on this if you want. This is a very productive fly and has a long history to it. It was also in Ray Bergman's book, Trout, and it is the sister fly of the King of the Waters, which I've done a video on. So that's the Queen of the Waters, and I hope you enjoyed that.
Thanks for joining me at Devise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.